And welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. She is the author of the book Blindsided, no other than Miss Sheri Arcuria. Welcome to Book 101, Miss Sheri. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Yes, absolutely. So I am Sherry. I'm originally from California. I'm an obesity survivor. I had gastric sleeve 11 years ago, and I have lived a life around mindset and changing the way that I approach life in situations and circumstances. And I have been living my best life ever since, helping others change their mindset to be the best version of themselves possible.
Miss Sheri Arcuria, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. The title Blindsided is powerful. What is the blindsiding moment that become the catalyst for this book?
So it was a couple years ago. I found myself on the park at 5 o'clock in the morning, deleting the contacts from my phone and realizing in that moment I didn't want to be on Earth anymore. And it was a pivotal moment in my life where a specific incident happened that completely made me chuckle out loud in my darkest moment. And I realized that life is worth living and it's worth fighting for. And ever since then, I just completely changed my mindset, how I approach circumstances and change. And when we get blindsided in life, which we all do.
What was your primary motivation for writing this book? Was it for personal or help others or something else?
I think it's a little bit of column A and column B. It was definitely cathartic for myself and therapeutic to write my journey and put it on paper and kind of like relive what I had been through. It kind of gave me a new perspective to go back into time and relive these moments with a different headspace and realize I'm a firm believer that everything happens for a reason. And so I did it mostly for myself, but I was like, if I was able to pull myself out of the rubble, I know there's a lot of other people who have faced that decision themselves and have faced hard times. And we've all had the rug pulled out from underneath us. So if there's a way that I can express to people through my story that if I can come out of this, then you can too.
At what point did you realize your personal story needed to be shared publicly, and how did you overcome the vulnerability of that?
I think because it was during when we had the COVID pandemic, and we watched how everyone got blindsided at once. Like it didn't matter how much money we had or what our status was or our education, we were all affected equally. And we had two options. We could either, complain about it and be miserable, or we can do something about it. And during that time, because we all had downtime, as you know, a lot of us were stuck in homes. It really made me reflect on life, and that was kind of like when I decided to kind of start writing the story a little bit. I didn't have the intention of publishing this book. I had published my other book about weight loss, but we live in a world where mental health is such a huge issue. We all struggle with things. We struggle with breakups, with family dynamics, with financial losses, and it's not something that any of us are immune to. So I think that anyone who's ever struggled with anything in life can resonate with this book in some capacity.
Let's talk about the writing process and the structure. How did you approach structuring the narrative? Did you write chronologically, or did you start with the most impactful scenes first?
In this book, I started with the pivotal moment um, of sitting in the park, and then I decided to go back in time and kind of walk the reader through all of the events in life that led to that moment in the park.
Miss Sherry, what did your writing routine look like? Were you able to maintain discipline, or was just the process more emotional or sporadic?
For me, because oftentimes we bottle our emotions for so many years that normally I don't always write it out. So when I do, it's almost like you can't keep up with it. So with both experiences in my books, I wrote them in short periods of time because once I made the decision that I wanted to put it on paper, it was almost like the floodgates have opened, and I actually would put wrist guards on my wrists because they would hurt so bad because I would write from morning, noon, and night until it was done. The first book, Unzipped, was written in 5 days, the first draft at least. And this one, it's a little bit longer, so it took about 2 weeks. I usually start with an outline. There's specific stories that that you want to make sure it's included, and I kind of just do an outline, and then I just sit and I just let it come out of me.
Miss Sherry, how do you handle the emotional weight of revisiting traumatic or difficult memories during the writing process?
I can say that it's very emotional, reliving it, because subconsciously we hold on to everything, every emotion that's associated with any event that we go through. And so going back into that time, you're reliving it as if it's happening in that moment. So like I said, it's a very therapeutic exercise, or at least it was for me, because I have grown so much as a person today versus the person I was going through those experiences. So when I'm writing it, it's still emotional. I can still feel those emotions, but I come from a much different place where I've learned and reflected so much, and I can understand in life why things happened the way that they did at the time, even if I didn't understand it at the time that it happened. So for me, it was more of like a very reflective writing process, being able to see all of the events that I had gone through in my life and being able to compare it to where I am today and have it kind of come full circle, so to speak.
What was the most difficult chapter or section to write and why, Miss Sherry?
Um, I think it was the beginning of the book when I talk about the park. Like I said, I didn't want to be here anymore. That was probably one of the lowest moments in my entire life, and going through the thought process, or my thought process at that time, and how I was navigating through it by minute. Um, it was probably one of the darkest periods in my personal time, which is extremely vulnerable to write about. But like I said, so many people have struggled with those split second decisions in their life before. Some people weren't fortunate enough to make the right decision in the end. And so for me, it was extremely vulnerable to put it out there that I myself have had those thoughts before and miraculously was able to come out of it.
Did you work with a writing coach, editor, or therapist during the process to help you navigate the content?
So I didn't. So with both books, I'm a novice at it. Like I'm not an established writer. I just did everything on my own. I just kind of sat, and right now I would hire editors and I would hire professionals to proofread and to check for errors. But other than that, I kind of figured it out on my own how to do it.
Miss Cherry, let's talk about the craft and voice. How did you find the right narrative voice for telling this story?
I think for me, I'm definitely an extrovert. I've done like a lot of public speaking engagements, so I write as if I'm having a conversation with someone. So when the reader's reading it, it's like having a conversation with me. Um, so I guess it's the best way that I can describe it. It came more naturally for me because it is my story. We all know our own stories.
Hmm. And how did you find the right narrative voice for telling the story between the lines?
Um, and that's a good question. I think because I'm a firm believer in finding the humor in everything. There's a lot of humor in the book. And I've always been one that when things are really bad, I always joke that I have a very sick and twisted sense of humor. It's kind of like and maybe it's a defense or coping mechanism for me on having to deal with that. So my narrative story, it's storytelling, and it's trying to find a blend of talking about serious topics but still finding light and finding the humor. If we can find humor in any dark situation, that's usually an indication that we're still here for a reason and we're worth fighting for and to keep going. So I try to mix a lot of humor in between the style.
Miss Sherry, what was your process for recalling dialogue, details, and emotions from the past? Did you rely on journals or was it from memory?
Most of it's from memory. A lot of times when we have any kind of traumatic or negative experiences, we oftentimes remember it very vividly. I kind of joke, it's like when you go to a restaurant and you order food. If you have a good experience, you often don't give a good review, but if you have a bad experience, you remember everything that was bad about it. And so I do have a I'm a visual person, so I have a photographic memory on a lot of events from the past. So it was fairly easier for me to tap into that and recall conversations and dialogue.
Miss Sherry, were there any books or authors that serve as a model for your in terms of style or handling similar subject matter?
Not necessarily subject matter, but I love the style of Dan Brown. I was obsessed with the Da Vinci Code when it first came out, and what I loved about his books is it kept making you want to not put the book down. It was like almost like every chapter ended on this little cliffhanger or some little hook that you like. You're reading, and you're like, okay, just one more chapter. Okay, just one more chapter. And I read that book in 24 hours. I couldn't, and I was not much of a reader at the time, and so I like the idea of wanting the reader to keep wanting more. So I styled the book with the chapters to kind of leave a little cliffhangers so that even though it's not the same style or theme of storytelling, um, the common theme that I've gotten from readers is that they couldn't put it down. They kept wanting to read more because there was just enough to keep them engaged to want to stay in the book.
Miss Sherry, let's talk about the challenges and breakthrough. What was the biggest unexpected challenge you faced while writing the book?
I think the biggest challenge when you're writing any kind of an autobiography is how vulnerable do you want to get with the world and with strangers. And so there, for me, there was a lot of back and forth on how dark do I want some of my stories to be revealed. When you write about yourself, good or bad, you're opening yourself up for criticism, judgment from people who don't know you. So that was probably the biggest internal struggle during writing it. And then I decided if I'm going to do this, I'm going to go big or go home. So I just put everything in there.
Was there a moment during the writing process that itself was a breakthrough or revelation for you?
Um, Off the top of my head, I can't think of anything specifically. I can't think of anything specifically.
Okay, so how do you deal with self doubt or the fear of how your story will be received by readers and especially by people mentioned in it?
How do I overcome that?
Yes.
I realize that in life, you're not going to make everyone happy. We're always going to have critics. Even Harry Potter has critics, and the best-selling authors in the world are going to have critics. But that doesn't stop them from writing their thoughts out. And when it comes to any kind of self-help book or autobiography, if it even reaches one person in a positive way, the high that you get from that far outweighs from a bunch of strangers on the internet criticizing something that they didn't like about your book. So it's more about the lives that you can impact, not the ones that can try to tear you down.
Miss Sherry, as an author, what are your short term and long term goals?
I'm currently working on my third book right now. I do own a clothing brand and a community server where we help people with mindset and overcoming their obstacles and overcoming their own blind sides. So short-term goals is I would love to get the third book finished and published by the end of the year. And long-term goals is to keep building a community um, of people and support. I just launched a coaching program, one-on-one mindset coaching. I just got certifications as a nutrition coach, personal trainer, and a weight loss specialist. So my goal, long-term goal, is to make a living helping as many people as I can who want to better themselves.
Good luck to your goals, Miss Sherry, and
Thank you.
looking forward for more success.
Thank
And
you.
what would be your piece of advice for those people out there who want to be an author like you?
Do it. The biggest thing I've heard from people is that they want to write a book. My grandmother said for years, I could write a book, Sheri, I could write a book, and she never did it. Don't let fear stop you, because the only thing that we're going to fear is our own reflection in the mirror every single day. If it's something you want to do it. I'd rather fail at doing it than to have the regret of never trying to do anything in life.
Yes, just do it, people. If you have the passion to write, and stop
Do it.
procrastinating. Yes, do it. And can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
One book that I really loved is actually there's two of them. I'm a big believer in The Secret. I don't have the author's name offhand, but I watched the documentary and I read the book, and it was absolutely amazing about manifesting what you want and how positive thoughts create positive actions. That was a huge game changer for me. And recently I'm reading Let Them by Mel Robbins, and that's been, for personal growth, has been a game changer for me.
Mm, definitely. And thank you for that recommended books, Miss Shari. And what was the editing process like? How did you decide what to keep and to leave it out?
Um, if it flowed or not. I reread the book over and over again, and so during I would do the first round of editing, and so if there are some stories, if it just didn't fit with the flow of it, I would take it out. Or sometimes in rereading it, it would spark something else that would be a good fit for it. And then that's one thing I did hire, is I hired outside editors to come and clean it up for me.
How did you land on the title Blindsided? Were there other contenders?
Not really. Ironically, when I wrote my first book, Unzipped, I made a reference to a story in which I was blindsided. And at the time that I wrote this book, I said, watch out for my next book, Blindsided, coming soon. And I was actually just making a joke about it. I didn't have an intention at the time of writing a second book. So when I was writing this one, the term blindsided came to mind. And I said, that's a perfect thing to tell, is all of the times in life that I've been blindsided, and how I got through each thing. And so it just kind of took on a life of its own.
Interesting indeed. And what did it feels like when finally write the end? What was the primary emotion?
Oh, a lot of relief that the book itself was done, and relief that carrying the weight of your past was left in the pages, so no longer carrying it inside of myself.
And Sherry, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please don't listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry is second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too. Comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well. Geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast Law 101 and mental health 101 Love Letters in its third season, and Movie 101 Review and Music 101 in fourth season, and Science 101 and Sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Miss Sherry, Now that the book is out in the world, what do you hope readers take away from your story, and what is the one message you want to leave them with?
Oh man, you ask good questions. Everyone has a
Thank you.
story to everyone has a story to tell. Everyone is willing to listen if you find the right people. It does not matter it doesn't matter what happens in your life. Like I said, we are all going to be blindsided at one point or another. If this pandemic taught us anything, is that the world can crash down around us with no warning, and you have two options, sink or swim, and your mindset is going to be about that. So anything that we are blindsided about, there is always a way out of it.
There is always a hope, people, because hope is
Absolutely.
always in the corner. Miss Sheri Arcuria, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So,
Thank
can
you
you
so much for
please,
having me.
yes, so can you please invite our listeners to support all your books?
Yes, so you can go to mobamentality.com. You can buy both of the books on there. They're also both available on Amazon as well.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Sheri Arcuria because if you support her, for sure, more and more empowering books like this to come. So, Miss Sheri, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. It was truly a pleasure.
Marticon people, see you soon.